Hey everyone, my name is Mohammed, and I'm your host for Freelance Canada, a show about what it's really like to freelance in Canada. Each week, I interview Canadian freelancers and industry experts as they get candid about the ever challenging, always exciting, and sometimes hilarious aspects of freelancing. November is Financial Literacy Month in Canada. Throughout the month, organizations from across the country are encouraged to share resources that can help Canadians make better decisions about their finances. To celebrate Financial Literacy Month, all of our episodes in November will explore financial topics that can enable Canadian freelancers to build a better relationship with money. As you reflect on your finances this month, please send us your questions on Twitter and Instagram at BetterWithBenji. We'd love to hear from you. On the show today, I'm going to talk to Barry Choi. Barry is a personal finance and travel expert based in Toronto. His website, Money We Have, is one of Canada's top resources for all things travel and money. Barry combines his knowledge for finance with his passion for travel to encourage people to see the world without spending a fortune. Whether it's trip planning, loyalty programs, or training destinations, Barry shares practical tips that everyone can use. In this episode, Barry and I talk about how Canadian freelancers can reflect on their credit card purchases and choose a credit card that will help them maximize every dollar spent. So let's get to it. Maybe we can take this time to actually get to the beginning a little bit and learn a little bit about you. So you've had a blog now running for, God, how long has it been?
It's been about 6 years now, I think.
Yeah. And so how did that come about?
Oh, in my former job, I used to be a TV director in Toronto.
Of course.
At a major telecommunications company. And what happened is they laid off a bunch of staff. And normally when staff is laid off, that means more work for everyone else, right? But in my case, because I was TV director, I actually had less work. And people are like, how did that happen? Well, what happened with me is they had eliminated one of the shows I was directing. But they still needed me to direct other shows. So I basically had way more free time. And while some of my coworkers were just like, going to the mall or going for long walks, I was just bored out of my mind at work. Well, not that I was bored. I just had a lot of downtime, right? Personal finance was always something I was interested in. I started reading about other bloggers who, a lot of them have become good friends of mine now. And then I did a couple of guest posts. And then eventually I'm like, I'm going to launch my own blog. And eventually what I did is I leveraged my media contacts to build my reputation. And I was fortunate enough to make this a full-time career. And I mainly did that just because my wife and I had a daughter. I was telling you before we started recording, she's 3 years old. And I decided that if I wanted to spend more time with my family, I had to make a career change. And that's why I left television.
So how long were you running Money We Have before you decided to leave television and work on it full-time?
4 years I had it operating. And then in we're in 2020. So 2018 is when I called it quits.
Wow. And how's that progression? Because, even now we're doing this podcast, but when you're first starting off, there's so much to touch on when it comes to finances. I suppose, what was your thought process like in terms of what are the contents you're going to create and how are you going to research?
Yeah, it's a bit of a trial and error, right? So even though I'm a formally trained journalist, blogging is completely different. I was fortunate at the start that obviously I was blogging on the side. It wasn't my full-time thing. It's not like I just quit my job and decided to become a blogger, right? So I had enough freelance income by the time I quit where it wasn't a big deal. But as far as content creation is concerned, I treated it like my old job. I just looked at what's currently trending, look at the news cycles, come up with a content calendar. I set deadlines for myself. That's one of the biggest problems for a lot of new bloggers. They start off with 10 or 20 really great articles, but then they run out of steam. They don't know what to write about. They don't know which direction they're going in. Sometimes it's a bit of a trial and error process. I tried to cover a few topics and then I decided these aren't topics I really want to talk about. To give you a specific example, I used to write about a net worth update. As a personal finance blogger, it was very popular. People were talking about, hey, this is how much my investments are worth, or this is how much my mortgage has gone down every couple months. And to me, I felt like, although it was interesting for my own ego, it didn't really benefit anyone because it does not matter how much I'm making, how much I've paid or whatever, because everyone's different. I didn't want someone to read my blog and be like, oh my God, Barry makes X amount of dollars, or, he's a dual income. I'll never be able to do what he does. So I'm going to stop reading. I'll never be able to get out of debt. So what I like to do instead is to provide practical advice that anyone can take advantage of. So, kind of walk them through their journey. This way, they're not comparing to someone, because that's the problem with personal finance. It's too easy to compare to other people, and then you get sidetracked.
I agree with that quite a lot. And it's also great to learn how you were able to transition from working on your platform for 4 years before you swapped over. Most people, I assume, believe how easy blogging or content creation is, only to then, once they get started, to realize how difficult it is and how much you have to really think through. And the
It's the
consistency.
amount of work too, right? Like
Yeah.
basically, when I was writing the blog, it was almost another full-time job.
Yeah.
And the amount of effort staying updated, like it's insane how much work you got to put into running a blog.
Right. So really for today's chat, for me, is just to get a better understanding how Canadian freelancers can get more value out of their credit cards.
Hmm.
And a big part of it is just that I talk to a lot of different people, and when I ask them about their credit cards, typically they have one of their generic credit cards that the bank offers, not even a free cashback or travel rewards. And that's something that I never understand and is always something that frustrates me. It's that why banks even have non-rewards purpose cards when they have free versions of other rewards cards. So I suppose it'll be good for us to really dive into that. And I'm excited to kind of just learn from you and see how we can ensure that Canadian freelancers have a better understanding of how they can go about securing a better credit card that provides them with more value.
Yep.
So first things, just for people who may not even know, what are the different types of credit cards available?
Oh, there's so many, right? Usually it's defined by rewards. So travel and cashback obviously are the most popular. There's some co-branded ones like Scene, which is Cineplex's rewards loyalty program. There's a lot of store credit cards, Walmart, HSBC. But it's also not always about rewards. There's low interest credit cards, which are great for people who are having issues with debt or who want to manage their cash flow better. So there's almost a credit card for everything. And then you also need to factor in the additional benefits that come with each credit card. So there are a lot of things to look at when you're deciding what kind of credit card you're going to get.
You mentioned some benefits. Could you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, so you were talking about how some people or some banks offer some basic credit cards and why would people get it? But if you look at the underlying benefits, some credit cards would have, say, roadside assistance, which may not appeal to everyone. But if it's a no fee card or it's only $50 or whatever, and you're getting a free roadside assistance program, which normally is like $150 a year, you're coming out ahead. So that alone makes it worthwhile. And then we look at travel rewards, some things that are obvious like lounge access, hotel status. What else can that travel insurance? But then there's other basic things that people would be interested in, like price protection, extended warranty, mobile device insurance, car rental insurance. There are so many different benefits available these days that you almost need an encyclopedia to find out what you're covered for.
Fair enough. And I suppose at the same time, that's why there are quite a few different websites that sort of help you figure out what sort of credit cards are make the most sense for you. And maybe we can also talk a little bit about understanding how can somebody go about understanding which credit card makes sense for them. Maybe you have a certain sort of criteria, or maybe you have general sort of recommendation that you feel applies to most people.
Yeah, to me, there's so many different variables, right? You got to ask yourself a few questions first. So usually what I ask people first is like, what kind of rewards are you looking for? So normally, generally speaking, it comes down to cashback and travel. So if we talk about travel first, okay, what kind of travel rewards are you looking for? Are you looking for airline rewards? Are you looking for hotel rewards? Are you looking for a credit card? Like, how often do you travel? Do you travel a lot? Like, obviously right now, not many people are, but if you're traveling frequently, how important is lounge access to you? How important is flexibility of your points? So you are also sometimes, and it doesn't matter who this is for a freelancer or any regular Canadian, you got to figure out what your goals are. Let's just say someone wants to take a business class trip 5 years from now on Air Canada. So they should be collecting AeroPoint plans now. So to me, there's all these different variables. And speaking from a freelance perspective, if you're spending a lot of money on a regular basis for expenses to run your business, you might have so many points. Sometimes you got to look for other benefits that matter to you, like just having a high credit limit.
Okay, that's it's funny you say that, because I assume most people that would end up listening to this podcast would typically already have a credit card, if not more, right? And so at that point, if I'm listening to this and it's like, yeah, there is a trip I want to go on to, but I don't have an airplane credit card. I have let's say some travel British Airlines or something of that sort, Aviant card. What would be my next steps then?
Yeah. So, if you're going to travel, it's like, where do you want to travel to? So, let's say for argument's sake, you want to go to Asia, right? And you want to fly business class. So, off the top of my head, I believe you need 155,000 Aeroplan points for a round trip business class ticket.
Jeez.
And assuming you're starting at 0 points, it sounds like a daunting task, right? But not really. It depends on your spending. So, normally the American Express Platinum card with the referral gives you 60,000 points, but you got to spend $5,000. Right now, they've cut that because of COVID, but that's 60,000 points right there. So you're already 1/3 of the way there just for signing up for one credit card. Then you start thinking about the individual Aeroplan credit cards. So TD has one, CIBC has one. If you sign up for both of them, there's another 40,000 points. So you're already up to 100,000 points, right? Then you think about the American Express Gold Rewards card. You sign up for that, there's another 30,000, there's 130,000 points. And keep in mind, you need to meet the minimum spending requirement for a lot of these credit cards.
Right.
But the point is, if you're spending a lot of money and you're constantly paying off your bills, there's no reason you shouldn't constantly be applying for credit cards and taking advantage of those sign-up bonuses because they have a high value for you later. In the industry, you're basically taking advantage of bonuses. It's not exactly something that the credit card companies, are okay with, but at the same time, if you're not doing anything fraudulent, I think it's perfectly fine.
I'm excited. Of course, you can't see me because for me, it's all about how can I get the most value out of anything that I'm doing. And you've already, just through your example, I think you technically opened up 4 credit cards there to get you to your trip to Asia using Aeroplan, right?
Yeah, that's right. And there's so many other options too. Sometimes there's some really low-hanging fruit that people don't realize that's like literally right in front of their faces, right? So a good example is right now the WestJet RBC World Elite MasterCard has a sign-up bonus of 350 WestJet dollars after your first purchase. So you can literally buy a pack of gum and you've earned 350 WestJet dollars. Even though there's an annual fee of $119, you're still ahead by $230. You get free checked baggage, and you get a companion voucher. So there's an automatic value right away of over $500 just in the first year alone. And then there's also some credit cards that give you a sign-up bonus and there's no annual fee for the first year. So again, it's just really simple things that are easy for anyone to obtain.
So let's sort of, I guess, take a look at this from a perspective of people who may not be as up to date on all things credit cards, right?
Sure.
And you have people that might be listening to this and it's like, oh my God, Barry just opened up 4 credit cards. Isn't his credit rating going to tank? And then how do I manage 4 credit cards? Like what's going to happen? And like, am I going to be able to get a credit card in the future? And when do I close the credit card? So clearly, even as I say this, I think I've come up with about 4 questions. So maybe we first take a stab at understanding what happens when you do decide to start getting multiple credit cards.
Yeah, so the first thing is every single time you apply for a new credit card, your credit score takes a hit of 10 points. But as long as you're paying your bills on time, it will go back up probably after 3 or 4 months to where it was. So obviously the other tricky thing is you're going to have a lot of access to credit. People who have a lot of access to credit may overspend. So I don't recommend people open credit cards if they've got a history of overspending. And then, like I said, to get these sign-up bonuses, quite often you need to meet the minimum spending requirement, which could be, $1,000, $3,000, $5,000. So it only makes sense if you've got major expenses coming up. So even though I talked about opening up 4 credit cards to take advantage of these benefits, I time it out, or basically it's like, hey, my insurance is coming up. That's about a $2,000 purchase. I might as well open up another credit card and take advantage of it. Or in the past, whenever I was about to purchase airfare, for a family of 3, airfare could easily cost me $2,500, $3,000. So again, I would just open up another credit card and be like, I'll take advantage of the bonus points. And typically what I would do in the past is I would just cancel the credit card before the next annual fee is up. So I would keep the card for a year, see how it works for me, but I would make a note in a spreadsheet or an email saying, hey, it's time to cancel this credit card.
Got it. And for those who are equally as afraid of canceling or closing a credit card as they are of opening one, what can they expect when they do cancel their credit card?
Unless it's your oldest credit card, nothing really happens, right? Usually what I tell people is keep one no-fee card. That means no annual fee on your credit history. So this way you're constantly building a credit history, even though you're not using it. And for people who are afraid of, not afraid, but just don't want to constantly open up credit cards, just look for a credit card that lines up for your spending. So if you happen to spend a lot of money on groceries, maybe you're getting the Scotiabank Gold Card or the American Express Cobalt Card, which give you a higher earn rate for groceries. Or like I said, if you're just a casual person who just travels a lot for business once or twice a month normally, look at the American Express Platinum Card because it gives you unlimited lounge access. So you don't have to open up credit cards nonstop. You just want to find something that lines up with your spending. And for freelancers who might be small business owners, we talked about this earlier, who are constantly making purchases, maybe getting a formal business card, which has a high credit limit, is in your best interest because there's a lot of companies out there who are spending $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month, and they're always paying their bills back on time, but they just need access to that credit to manage their cash flow. There are some options out there for you too.
That's actually quite insightful. So when you said there are some options out there, what would be some examples of that?
Yeah, mainly business cards. American Express business cards or charge cards. So they really, generally speaking, they don't really have a limit, right? They're based on how much you're spending. And if you're constantly paying your bills on time, they'll just constantly extend you more credit. So, think about someone who's just purchasing a lot of supplies to run their business for whatever reason is, you're constantly charging money. So you're not focused on the sign-up bonus because you're spending so much, you're earning points anyways. That said, you have to look at all the different business cards. So just about every single bank has a business card option that gives you similar features, high credit limit, fraud protection from any employees if you have a joint card. But then what you want to look at is the point system. Does this point system benefit you in the long run? So I personally prefer American Express's membership rewards points because they're highly flexible. Every bank has a different rewards program. So even though you bank with someone traditionally, it might make more sense to open up an account with another bank or another credit card provider because you know that their points are better for you in the long run.
Right. I guess, okay. So if I'm somebody who is spending quite a bit and freelancing, one of the credit cards for me would be to look at Amex, but of course it's always best to compare and see actually what my spending is like and what are my personal goals to then align accordingly, because Amex for you works great, but may not work for someone else, right?
That's exactly it. So let's just say, for example, someone who's spending a lot, but their vendors don't take American Express, then obviously American Express is not a go. And then you just got to look at any of the other cards available and their point system. RBC's got a great rewards program. So if you can get an RBC business credit card, would benefit you also. But like I said, think about long-term goals and how these partners work. You talked about British Airways. American Express allows you to transfer your points. So does RBC allows you to transfer your points to them. You're the type of person who prefers fancy hotels. Maybe you get the American Express Marriott Bonvoy business card because it'll allow you to earn status quicker.
Right. I mean, this has been good for, people who have their finances in order. They have certain goals about travel or just being able to get their portion of their money back through a cashback. What happens to people who may just be getting started or they have been started but have ended up carrying quite a bit of a balance month over month on their credit card, or just have other debt that they're trying to all make sense by maybe, bringing over some of their, let's say, line of credit debt and paying that off with a credit card? What options could exist for those people?
Yeah, well, they should actually be doing the opposite. Generally speaking, the line of credit will have the lowest interest rate. So if you have any credit card debt and you're able to get a line of credit or you already have a line of credit, you should be using that to pay it off. A good example is credit cards. Normal credit cards have an interest rate of about 20%, whereas a line of credit might be anywhere from 3 to 7%. So you can immediately pay it off. But not everyone has access to a line of credit or may not qualify for one. So one thing that you could probably qualify for is a low interest credit card or a balance transfer credit card. So the way these credit cards work is if you apply for one and you choose the optional balance transfer, you can get anywhere from 0 to 4% interest for your transfer for 6 to 10 months. So instead of paying 20% interest, you're now paying 0 to 4% interest for that time period, which allows you to obviously pay down your balance as quickly as you can. And technically speaking, and I don't necessarily recommend this unless you're really good with your money, you could constantly open up new balance transfer credit cards to keep taking advantage of the low interest rates.
Right, and just try and pay off at that lower rate over the course of time as you're able to.
That's the ideal situation, but quite often, it's difficult because if you got in debt for one issue or another, it's not easy to get out of it.
Right. Okay. So I think that's a good way of understanding when it makes sense to get new and different types of credit cards and how each could be purpose for each individual's situation and what their goals are. For those listening, it's like, okay, great, I'm going to go open up a new credit card. What do you recommend freelancers do or look for before they even go ahead and open up a new credit card?
We kind of discussed it already. We just, what your goals are more than anything else, right? Come up with a list of your priorities and then know the value of each benefit. So people get obsessed over annual fees. I personally don't care about them as long as you're getting enough benefits out of them. And quite often, like I said, the travel insurance alone will cover those annual fees. Right. Then what you want to do is just start researching individual card, look at lists. You started the cast with talking about credit card comparison sites. But it's important to know that you got to check more than one, because a lot of these comparison sites, quite often they favor the ones where they're getting commission. And admittedly, even on my own personal website, I read about every single credit card out there. But I admit, I definitely favor certain credit cards that benefit me personally. So it's definitely on the user to do a little bit of extra due diligence and do their own kind of comparison, if you know what I mean, because quite often these sites are compromised to a certain extent.
Right. And what has been your experience? Because I guess this is definitely a little bit leading in the sense that, I'm biased towards waiting out for a credit card until there's a promotion on it and bonus points, and then I'll go and apply for it so I can take advantage of that, rather than why would I apply for a credit card when there aren't any bonuses, right?
Yeah, no, to me, that makes perfect sense. There's always bonuses. And the funny thing about credit card providers is you don't really get a surprise bonus, right? Generally speaking, it's the same sign-up bonus all the time. But like once a year or twice a year, they'll have a special promotion where you get a little bit of extra point. If you don't have like a huge expense coming up or you can afford to wait, you might as well just wait until that promotion comes along. TD, with their airplane credit cards, they constantly change their promotions, but at the same time, there's always one really good one every single year. And you'll know it when you see it, because even the average consumer will be like, oh, that's a good promotion. We were talking about the WestJet Rewards World Elite MasterCard. The normal sign-up bonus is $250. And right now it's $100. It's $350. So you're getting $100 more. Well, anyone can tell that's a huge difference, right? It's like a 40% difference. So yeah, if you're waiting around for something better, specifically with the WestJet card, that's a mistake. You should just sign up for it now.
Right. I guess maybe if you have any hacks of how people can maximize just the idea of applying the credit card.
It's not really a hack, but it's just, you should basically just combine points whenever you can. So again, using WestJet as an example, if you're a family, you got 2 kids, there's no reason both parents shouldn't apply for their credit card, right? So they both get the sign-up bonus. They get 2 companion vouchers, so you can use it on your 2 kids. You get free luggage. So let's just say you live in Vancouver and you want to fly to Orlando with WestJet, you get those credit cards. You could easily save $1,000, right? Like just by applying those 2 cards. And that's factoring in the 2 annual fees that you're going to pay. Other hacks, I wouldn't necessarily call them hacks, but like we said, you're going to take advantage of the sign-up bonus points. With American Express, you can transfer your points to Aeroplan. So if you basically collect various points, but they can end up in the same loyalty program, it's not really a hack, but it's just being smart with your points.
Right. I like that. I suppose typically when I've been looking for some credit cards, I'll see if there's any websites where I can get like gift card back in exchange for applying for that credit card through the site. So it just maximizes my value even more.
That's just smart, because a lot of these credit card sites, they get $100 commission for every credit card you get. But these cashback sites, they're basically splitting the commission with you. So if you're getting $50 back and there's a $120 annual fee, you're only paying $70 for your annual fee. So like you said, you might as well take advantage of anything that you can get back because it works to your benefit.
Right. And I suppose for anyone wondering what these sites are, I think Rate Supermarket is one website that I've used.
Yeah, there's various ones. Great Canadian Rebates does one. Rate Hub does it. My own personal website, Money We Have, give myself a plug right there. You should always do your research, because there are so many different credit cards. I don't think there's any bad credit cards. Every credit card, there's a specific demographic that it would appeal to. So you just got to find out which demographic you belong to.
Right. Makes absolute sense. I'm curious to know if there is a specific number of credit cards you typically recommend, because most Canadians, or most people in general, I would say, are very afraid of that black box that is called a credit score. Right.
Yeah, I get that. Me personally, I recommend 3 credit cards, one of all the major brands: American Express, Visa, MasterCard. Your primary card should basically be wherever you shop the most, take advantage of the best points or whatever your goals happen to be. I always carry one backup, because there are some merchants that don't take American Express, that don't take Visa. So you just want to have both available to you just in case. And keep in mind, like not all of them should have an annual fee. You should keep some where it's just no fee, so you have it as a backup.
Right. Got it. And is there specific credit limit that you encourage people for? Because I understand credit limit can be very much a topic that is varies from person to person, because some people are able to manage their credit and other people will definitely go above their credit limit.
Well, the general idea is like the credit limits are assigned to you anyways, right? So as long as you keep your spending under control, I don't think it matters. But if you're having any debt issues, obviously, or you tend to overspend, I would keep your credit limit low. But at the same time, if you do that and you're constantly maxing out your low limit, that gives you a high credit utilization ratio. So for example, let's just say you have a $1,000 credit limit and you're always keeping a balance of around $900. Even though you're constantly paying it off, you normally charge about $900 a month or whatever. That means you have a utilization ratio of 90%. And a lot of credit card providers or the credit bureaus will look at this and say, hey, why is this person using so much credit? This is possibly a flag. Which is kind of insane because when you think about it, let's just say you increased your limit to $3,000 and you're still spending the same amount, your credit utilization ratio drops down to 30%. And all of a sudden the credit bureaus are like, oh, that's not so bad. But the joke is like you've just given yourself more access to credit, right? So yeah. I don't know. I get why they do it, but my point is, you walk into a bank, the ATM, you probably emails, marketing, everything. You've probably been asked for, do you want to increase your credit limit in the last 24 hours? And it's not necessarily a bad thing to say yes. You just got to know why you're doing it.
Right. So which credit cards do you have?
Where do you want me to start? I got a dozen. I've got like the American Express Platinum card when I travel, Marriott Bonvoy American Express whenever I typically stay at Marriott properties a lot, so I use that. I got the WestJet World Elite MasterCard. What else is in my wallet right now? RBC Avion card. I got a PC Financial World Elite MasterCard. I had the Capital One Aspire. I just canceled that. I just canceled the TD Aeroplan credit card. I just canceled the Home Trust. I've also got Coho and I've got Stag. I've got a bunch of credit cards. So those are the ones that are just on the top of my head right now.
I mean, a few of those you mentioned do have an annual fee. Any hacks around how you've been keeping or tips around how you're managing all of those credit cards and keeping tabs on those, and then B, making sure you're paying as little as possible when it comes to annual fees?
Well, I have a spreadsheet, to be perfectly honest with you, that tells me exactly when I sign up for a credit card, when the annual fee is due. Generally speaking, obviously, I'll keep any credit card with no annual fee because it doesn't cost me anything. Some of these credit cards, though, they charge you an inactivity fee. So that should be a reason to cancel. If you're not using a credit card and they're going to charge you a fee, get rid of it, right? But most of these credit cards that I have, they're for a specific reason or a specific merchant. And I still believe I'm getting more value out of the benefits than I do the annual fee, which is why I keep them.
You mentioned inactivity fee. When does that typically kick in?
It depends on the credit card. Not every credit card charges them, but basically if there's a 12-month period, no charges, then an inactivity fee would apply.
Got it. Okay, I should probably check my own.
It's becoming more common, but they weren't before, and I think a lot of people are just hanging on to credit cards and not using them. So the credit card providers are rightfully disappointed, and it costs them something to keep you as a member, even if you're not charging anything. So they want to just clean house.
Fair enough. Speaking of all these credit cards that you have and all the different ways you can maximize essentially different goals that each one of us has, what has been your best deal so far when it has come to credit cards?
Oh, best deal? For a little while, the American Express Business Platinum card had some insane promo where it was like 75,000 points. You had to charge $7,000 to your card, but 75,000 points is 3 round-trip tickets within North America on Aeroplan. Jeez. And that has a value of could easily have a value of $2,000, right? That's the easiest value, I would say. But even just recently, I keep talking about the WestJet RBC World Elite MasterCard. One of the easiest deals, one of the best deals right now, because you get the companion voucher. I've used that with my wife and my daughter. We've traveled with that. Again, the free checked baggage, and that applies to everyone on the same itinerary. And people don't realize that you get checked for baggage each way. So if there's 3 checked bags, I'm checking, that's $180 potentially each way it's going to cost me. There's the potential for a lot of savings just by holding onto that credit card.
Right. It definitely seems you're more on the side of travel points than cashback. Mm-hmm. And what has been your best trip so far that you had to pay little to nothing for?
I just flew to Dubai for nothing. I flew business class down via Egypt Air. It cost me $100. I flew first class back on Emirates. Anyone listening who's probably seen images, this is on the A380, where you basically have your own little suite. Yeah, I flew that back and it cost me nothing. But, yes, I'm obviously on the travel side. So we should touch back on cashback. Some of the best offers, quite often, there's 10% cashback up to the first $2,000. So you can get $200, no problem, right? So there's a lot of good cashback cards. I just personally think there's better rewards with travel cards. That said, if you don't travel, there's no purpose in getting a travel credit card.
Right. I think the one thing that I've always noticed is that how a lot of the times people feel that in order for them to maximize their credit card, especially a travel credit card, that they really have to have it for like 5 years before they can go on a trip. But as even in the beginning of this podcast, you mentioned that a person can very easily just collect or sign up for a bunch of different credit cards where they can get the same types of points, such as Aeroplan, and then be able to go on a trip a lot sooner than what most people believe, so long as their spending reflects the minimum spend needed.
Exactly, and definitely. Sometimes don't even think about airlines. Think about hotel status. There's the Best Western MBNA card. I believe it gives you like 20,000 points. That's basically a free night. I know the Best Western isn't exactly the sexiest hotel, but it's still a free night. The Marriott Bonvoy American Express cards gives you 50,000 points when you meet the minimum spend. 50,000 points could get you a hotel room that's easily worth $600, right? Mm-hmm. So you're paying a $120 annual fee, but you're getting enough points to get you a $600 room. Anyone who knows basic math can see that's a good deal.
Okay, so I think a good way to, or at least something fun that could be interesting to do, is that, who knows how long COVID's going to be around for, but let's say I'm somebody who's about to get myself a credit card, or that I want to go on a trip. Maybe not next year, but early the year after, so early 2022. And let's say, where do we want to go? You know what? Let's go to New Zealand. Okay. What would you suggest to somebody who's like, okay, I would like to go to New Zealand in early 2022?
Yeah, so that's a little bit tricky because it comes down to airline partners, right? Getting flight availability to New Zealand, pretty difficult, right? Would not be easy. You need select partners. So that's the trickiest part, right? So I might personally focus on hotel stays, but a better easy example might be something like Australia.
Okay.
So recently, Aeroplan onboarded another airline, Abu Dhabi's main carrier. Was it Qatar? Not Qatar. Anyways, their main carrier. I don't remember. The point is, you could take a stopover in Abu Dhabi and then continue on to Australia. And they're an Aeroplan partner. So it's the same thing. It would only cost you whatever amount of points. So again, it's simply just working backwards and applying for the credit cards. If you're going as far as New Zealand, Australia, that's like the furthest destination possible. So you need to accumulate points at a much quicker pace, and you need a lot more. So when you think about things more like, say, within North America, like think about the easy things. Flight to Los Angeles currently with the current system is you only need 25,000 Aeroplan points to get a round trip ticket. You basically sign up for one credit card, you could have it, right? So it's really, really easy to get there. But of course, the next thing is finding the seat availability is always the issue.
Got it. And the airline that you're speaking of, is that Etihad?
That's it. Okay. There you go.
That's the Abu Dhabi. Who's stopping on it? Okay. Got it. So I think another thing that I'm curious to learn from you is that we talked a lot about how we can utilize points to get airlines and flights. At the same time, I'm also the person that has like 3 different subscriptions to flight alerts. So whenever there is a airfare or there is a deal on a flight where, my points don't make sense there, right? Mm-hmm. What has been your experience there, and what have you usually done for those scenarios?
Yeah, so if you're flexible, definitely signing up for those flight deals is to your benefit. Having access to those points are better when you have set dates in mind. So say your cousin's getting married in India, in Hong Kong, or in London, right? 2 years from now or a year and a half, you're like, okay, I know my cousin's getting married there. I have to be here at this date. I cannot change my dates. So then you need to decide, it's like, okay, can I use my points, or am I short a certain amount of points to get there? How do I earn those points? Or do I use my points for hotels? What's the easiest way to get a free hotel stay while I'm at this wedding or this special gathering for whatever reason? And you just work your way backwards.
Got it. I suppose a lot of times when I think of travel, I think of airlines, but you're clearly pointing out that don't forget that accommodation will be needed when you get to wherever it is that you're trying to go, and maybe put
Yeah.
those points towards that rather than just thinking about flights specifically.
Yeah, a lot of people think about flights because they're thinking about the really luxurious flights, business class, the first class. But like you said, you're going to need accommodations most of the time. And there's a lot of nice hotels. I find the problem with a lot of people who collect points is they're stuck to their old ways in the sense that, I'm guilty of this too. You'll use your points. Let's say, for argument, use that example saying it's like 50,000 points gets you a $650 room or whatever, right?
Mhm.
In your head, you're like, there is no way I would ever pay $650 of my own money for this room. I can just get a hotel for like, $200 or whatever. So it's not a good value, but like you can't think about it that way when you're using points. When you're collecting points, you have to think about from a points value. Is this redemption a good value for your points, regardless of your own personal feelings? If the answer is yes, then it's worth doing it, right? Because in the end, like you said, yeah, you could get those cheap flight deals. Yeah, I could book the cheapest hotel possible, but then what's the point of collecting points, right?
Right. Okay, so I think there's quite a lot we've covered here, from applying or I suppose the first thing being figuring out what your goals are, how much you're spending and whatnot, then determining which credit card makes sense for you to apply, and looking for options of getting bonus points or getting rebates on your application. And then also how you can maximize essentially getting multiple different credit cards to get to that trip sooner or whatever it is that your goals are. I'm also keen to understand is, in general, you've also earlier mentioned how people can, if they typically have a credit card debt, they should look at transferring that funds over to a line of credit or moving over to a no fee credit card. Are there any other suggestions you've come across or tips or ideas that people can learn from in terms of better managing their credit card debt?
Yeah, it's just debt management at that point. If you have a whole lot of debt, it comes down to budgeting, right? You maybe have to cut your expenses. Maybe you got to work more so you can earn more money to pay off your debt. Maybe you need a debt repayment strategy. Focus on your highest interest debt first. Some people prefer to focus on the lowest balance first and pay that off to give them a motivational boost. So there's a lot of different ways. And if you're constantly running into debt problems, maybe you don't want to have a credit card. Or maybe you just want to switch to a prepaid credit card so you can only spend money that you actually have, as opposed to a traditional credit card where you can spend money which you don't have.
Okay, so I'm clearly, I mean, you can't see me. I'm excited because I can talk about finances forever. But I'd also be curious to know, over the course of your work, what have been some recurring themes that you've noticed where you figured it'd be good to have these general rules or tips for that might apply to all freelancers?
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of the things already that I think apply to freelancers. But for a lot of freelancers or people who are just starting their business or whatever their careers, they're focused on what they already know when it comes to credit cards. And I totally understand that. And some people don't even realize, like, just because you don't bank with, say, Scotiabank, that doesn't mean you can't apply for a credit card from them. And then the next obvious question would be like, well, how do I pay the bill if I don't bank with them? You just go to bill payments and you type in Scotiabank and you type in your account number, right? And we laugh, but a lot of people just don't realize that. And honestly, even for the longest time, I didn't know that you could apply for credit cards with different financial institutions. So again, what we talked about is how it doesn't hurt to have multiple credit cards if you manage your money properly. So I personally happen to shop a lot at No Frills, Loblaws, and Shoppers Drug Mart because they're close to me. So I have the PC Financial World Elite MasterCard, which gives me extra points. So that's an obvious credit card to have. So sometimes people will be really extreme. What they'll do is they'll color code their credit cards. They'll put like sticky notes on it and say, use this for gas, use this for groceries. You know what I mean? And I get it. So those are a few things I recommend to freelancers. But at the same time, whenever you're freelancing, you got to be smarter with your money. Income will come and go. You got to factor in what you have to pay for taxes later. You just got to be careful. You got to come up with an accounting system that will help you manage your books, basically.
I like that. Well, I really appreciate all of this time you have spent and educating me and providing us with tips and hacks. I'd love to know where people can find out more about you and your work online.
Yeah, my personal website is moneywehave.com, and I'm also on Twitter at Barry Choi.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking this time to talk to me.
Thanks. You too. Have a good one.
Bye,
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that's our show for today. If you liked Freelance Canada, then be sure to subscribe to our newsletter by visiting freelancecanada.fm. You'll get access to all of my personal notes, as well as book recommendations about the topics discussed in the episode. Now, You will not find any of this on our website, so be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out. As with most podcasts, you can listen to every episode through Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It would mean a lot if you could leave us a 5-star review. It would mean even more if you shared our podcast with another freelancer so it can help them in their journey too. Finally, if you're tired of leaving money on the table because you don't know which of your expenses you can write off, then sign up for Benji. You can start your 90-day free trial by visiting betterwithbenji.com, because freelance life is better with Benji. Thanks for listening.